Turn up your radio. It's time for DeLorean Talk with your host, Dave Tavers.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of DeLorean Talk. This is Dave Tavers, VIN 10515, talking to you from sunny Las Vegas, Nevada. But if you happen to be visiting Vegas, feel free to send a message. I always love meeting DeLorean owners from around the world, and Las Vegas is a good place to connect up with people. So don't be shy. Reach out and say hi, and let me know if I should drive the DeLorean or just meet you someplace for a soda or lunch or whatever. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I do love doing this. It's just timing to get everybody coordinated, and sometimes you get lucky and things work out. And thankfully today I've got someone else that I actually have seen a little bit on message boards and social media, but really have had no connection with until the other day when I had a TV show running, and sure enough, there comes the episode of American Dad where they featured the DeLorean, and I suddenly flashed back and went, "Oh yeah, wait a second, that was about a guy who worked on the show who had a DeLorean." I don't know that I've ever read a full accounting, but today we have Shawn Kerkhoff joining on the show. Hey, Shawn.
Hey, how you doing?
Great. So first we'll get in some of the just basic stuff, and then we can go in and you can share that story. And I'm sure you have plenty of other stories, but you are in Los Angeles. You've been there for a few years.
I've actually been here my whole life, as a matter of fact.
Oh, right on. I was born and raised in LA as well. It was definitely a change to move to Vegas, but it was time.
Understood.
In fact, I literally doubled the mileage moving from LA to Vegas. It was about almost 16,000 miles in the car, and now there's 32,000. So in 3.5 years, I doubled my mileage.
Very cool.
I had asked you about being on the show, and then I read that you actually don't have your DeLorean anymore.
That's correct.
How did you first decide to buy your car? When did you buy it, and what's the story of getting rid of it?
Well, it had always been a dream of mine, actually, a typical story. But prior to Back to the Future, I was a fan of it. My mom had somehow brought home a brochure, that old school black DeLorean brochure booklet, maybe, about 8.5 by 11 size. And it intrigued me. It just looked really cool, and I thought that's a very cool car, and sure, I'd love to have one someday. Of course, when the movie came out, it was, iconic at that point, and I was a fan of that. I can remember seeing the movie, sharing a seat, because they oversold the theater back in the day as a kid to see that movie when I was about 10 or 11 years old. So obviously I had a fandom for the car just in its beauty on its own, and then of course the movie, being a movie guy that I am and always been in around the movie business and interested in movies. It's kind of sealed the deal. So someday I figured, I'll have the money to do it. Well, one day I was, at work, and I was interested in the car, and I work in sound, and I realized, I thought to myself, nothing to do with the job, I can afford this. Can't buy it outright. I'm going to go into some debt, but I can handle it. So why not? Let's do this. So I started.
And it's not a Ferrari.
It's not a Ferrari. No, I mean, it's more iconic, and people will ask questions more than a Ferrari, but definitely, it's not a Ferrari, but it is a cool car. So that's how I initially came to think of it. And I started looking for the car and finding one, and I looked towards eBay. I don't know why. I just thought maybe I can get a good deal on there. Maybe I can find the right car. So that's where I went. I can go into more of that, but that's the basic. And that was around mid-2007.
How long when you finally decided you were going to buy one, how long did you look before you actually found your car?
That's a good question. I believe it was a couple months total time. Yeah, and it was an auction. So I waited for the right auction to purchase, or to bid on. And I actually did videotape. Somewhere I have the video, I think on a mini DV cam videotape, me actually on my computer In fact, believe it or not, the same computer I'm still recording this on. It's how old it is, but it still operates enough to do the recording. It's an old Mac G4, and I was on eBay at my friend's place. Actually, I had crashed at his place. I opened my computer, and I knew the auction was ending, and I just started videoing. And I said, "What the heck? If I win it, it's going to make a cool video. About winning a DeLorean auction on eBay." And I actually sniped it, if you know that term from auctioning on eBay. I totally sniped.
Tell people that don't know.
Yeah, well, for people who don't know, sniping is either setting up an automated bidding program to submit your highest bid at the last possible second to hopefully outbid someone else or other people that are bidding on it, or you do it manually. I think I did it manually at this point. I did know of some other programs, but I think I literally just did it manually. Had a strong enough internet connection and hit that submit button or bid button right at the last second. And these guys were going back and forth. I set my limit for this particular car, completely unrenovated, completely unupgraded. It had basically been the same it was since it came off the factory floor. It didn't even have the door guides or anything. And I bid the maximum I was going to pay was $15. And I put that in, and it went for $14,090. And I outbid the guys that have been going back and forth for like a week on it or whatever. And they were pissed. They were really pissed. And I heard they actually contacted the owner, who was up in Idaho, and tried to if he doesn't come through, I'll take it. I'll get it. They were really angry. And, I know I played sneaky, but hey, this is business. You got to find a way to get what you need for the price you can get it for. So that's how I did it.
And hey, you didn't do anything wrong. That's the way the system works.
Yeah, he was just mad because I came out of nowhere with no bids, but
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's how I did it, and that's how I got the car.
It was only a couple of months, so being a fan is one thing, but when you finally made that choice, okay, I'm going to buy a DeLorean. How much did you research? How much did you know what the right car was, what the right dollar amount was? Or did it not matter? You just, this is 2007, so that's 12 years ago now.
Yeah. I mean, it mattered how much. Obviously, I didn't want to go crazy, and I knew I'd have to put money into it. I figured at a minimum double what I was paying for the car, and that's the rule I've heard from DeLorean. Is the guys at DeLorean always said at least double just to get it up to up to snuff of whatever you pay for it. And then of course I went a lot more than that. I won't say exactly how much yet, but it was it was a lot, and I made it my own, and with the help of people at DeLorean, specifically Danny Botkin and Don Steiger at DeLorean. I definitely, with their guidance and their expertise and their creativity, made the interior of it very much unique, one of a kind, at least for the time, and I loved it. I can get into that some more. Yeah, that's how it came to be and progressed over time as I had the money to improve it. But sure. It was fun. It was a fun experience.
Other than DeLorean Motor Center that Don Steiger owned in Garden Grove at the time, did you know anybody that had a DeLorean, or were you just doing your own research and figuring things out?
I didn't actually know anybody at the time, I don't believe. I might have seen a few, maybe, and talked to a couple owners. I don't recall knowing anybody. I did contact Danny, as I recall, contact the shop in advance of getting the car. I think I did for some advice. I don't recall the details of that because I ultimately brought it right to him when we got it back.
The
getting it back
thing.
was an experience. Yeah, the getting it back was an experience in itself, because I had to go to Idaho, but it was fun. It was fun.
You bought, this is 12 years ago, which, that's a fair amount of time, 2007. So you bought a car more or less sight unseen. You saw some pictures, but I doubt that there were 150 photos. So
no,
there could have been some rust underneath. It could have been all, other things. Did it need a lot of work, meaning that there were problems, or had the car just sat for 10 or 20 years?
Well, the beauty of it was there's the good and the bad of this statement I'm about to make. And the good is it had only 6,000 miles on it. And the bad is it had only 6,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
So what a 30, well, not quite 30 at that point, 26-year-old car, is that right? 1981 to 2007, 26-year-old car. So it had issues in that it hadn't been well taken care of. But the guy that I bought it from was a car collector. He had never done the work that he wanted to on this car, and he kind of just got tired of the idea of it, and he wanted to get rid of it. But he did make it roadworthy because he knew that I was going to be driving it back 1,200 miles from Idaho.
Oh,
when we got there,
you're another one of those crazy people.
No, I'm one of those guys. I mean, I do look into things, but I also sometimes take a leap of faith with stuff. And since this was a dream, and I knew I'd be putting money into anyways, and I have like top AAA towing coverage, I figured I'd be okay, like for it. And what I did was, well, I didn't do it. My colleague at work was so excited that I was doing this because he's also a Back to the Future fan, and he said, "You know what? Nice. If you get this, I'm going with you." Well, the day I won it happened to be his birthday. And I was meeting up with his buddies for his birthday. So I said, how can I break this to him in a surprising way and then kind of tie it in with his birthday? So I thought of this. I went out to the grocery store. It sounds crazy, but I just did it. It came to me. And I bought one potato. And I put it in a sack. And I took it to his party. And I handed it to him. And I said, "This is for you." And he opens it up. And he's like, "This is a potato. What the hell is this?" And his buddy says, "You got the car." Because he knew it was going to be in Idaho, and his buddy knew what I was going to do. And then my friend lost his mind. He lost his mind, and he said, "You got it?" And yeah. And then I said, "Well, are you coming with me, like you said?" And of course, he turned to his better half, and she's like, "You can go." So on a weekend, I paid for his ticket, and we flew, connecting flight to LA to Arizona, and then Arizona to it was actually Spokane, Washington, which was about 20 miles from this guy's place in Idaho. And he picked us up, the guy, and took us back to his place. Anyways, this guy was cool, and he went over with me. He says I had to change the oil. I checked as best I could to make it safe to drive at least, and he was nice enough. He didn't charge me for any of that. And we that was by the time we got out of his place in Idaho, 4:00 on a Saturday. And we had to get 1,200 miles before work on Monday because we had to be in at work. So, we took shifts and drove, and then had to crash at a random hotel we found, and then got back like about 2 a.m. on Monday morning. And we promised one of the writers at Fox, where I worked on American Dad, that he was also a humongous Back to the Future fan. And he ended up co-writing the episode of the show. We promised him we'd show it to him right when we got back. So we went to his apartment at 2 a.m. and showed it to him.
It is interesting that for $15K, again, in 2007, you got a car that, whether or not he made it roadworthy, that's pretty great if you could drive that car the whole way. Well, or now are you going to tell me the story about the breakdowns?
Well, I'll tell you this. It never stopped us for very long. There were 2 incidents where things happened. One time, it just wouldn't start again after we stopped. I think that was in, I remember it being right at the base of Mount Shasta. Well, right about there, and it just wouldn't start again. I had a portable jumper that I was able to hook it up to, and it started right up after that. So I think maybe the alternator was getting bad, or the battery itself was weak. I don't know, but it started up. There was one other incident where it started to overheat. And we never did quite figure out what that is. We just let it cool down and restarted it, and it was fine. So those are the only 2 incidents, and they didn't delay us very long. So
wow,
that was it getting back. Now, once it was back, and they had a chance to look at it, Danny and Don and whoever, by their standards, it needed a big overhaul.
Yeah. Of course.
And, I got everything done to it that needed to be upgraded, the door guides and the wiring and this and that. Whatever they thought, I trusted them fully to do that. And this is, of course, one of the gas flap hoods, which I actually wanted. I did not want to have to lift my hood every time I filled the gas. So I just wanted that flat. So that was one of my priorities. So that meant that I had to specific, model year. For me, it was DeLorean, cool, gotta have.
Right.
This is a dream. Right. So, I wasn't going to have only that car, but I did ultimately use it as half the time it was my daily driver. But so awesome. that was a journey getting it back. There is a little more to tell about the connection to the people at the show and how that came to be in terms of the car. It actually started prior to me getting the car. In the process of looking for the car, I happened to come across a door. And this door was cool, and there was a producer on the show at the time who heard me.
Hold on, Shawn.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's take just a step back for a second, because I think that you're an actor as well as an audio tech, but tell people what you do and what your that background is, and how what the deal is with American Dad.
Oh, sure, no problem. Of course, that makes sense to tell that first. I started out as a kid doing some, quote unquote acting, and I did, a few commercials and extra work and whatnot, and that was fun. But I knew probably about age 12, I decided, I don't think I want to be in front of the camera. I would like to be behind it. I knew I wanted to be in the business. So, years go by. In high school, I worked in like stage crew at school. They didn't really have a radio, TV, or film program or anything like that, but I did that. And then I got out of school and I ended up going to junior college and studying film and radio and TV. And I discovered sound. We had to put together some animal sounds. So I had to collect that from these old albums. They had these old record albums. I started listening to these sound effects and I thought, this is really cool. And I thought, maybe I should look into this. And then I did. This is circa 93. That's how I got into sound. And then once I was there, it was off. I was off and running. I did as much sound work as I could. And when I got out of the business, I was internships at school, internships after school. And I finally ended up getting the job at Fox lasted 7 years while I was there. And very early on, I was, very involved with sound, recording the actors' voices for the show, meeting all these great people that came in to record.
For the small percentage of people who don't know, American Dad is a animated adult show, not it's not a kids cartoon, but it's animated, so it's all audio recording. There's no filming at all in the show, really.
Correct. Yeah. In fact, most animation is always done to the sound. So what they do is they record all the lines individually, like one at a time, without other actors usually in the room most of the time. And then that's what we did. And we create these radio plays, and then the animators would then work off of that radio play to create the animation. So what we do determines the pace and the comedy timing and the mood of the show, and using spaces and gaps in between the words. So that's the job. And it was very fun, very creative. The producers let me have a very close hands-on involvement, asked my opinion, most of the time. I'd say at least half of the audio decisions that were made in the show, in terms of editing at least, not necessarily recording, directing the actors, but editing, the choices of takes, I had an input on. So it was very, very much like to be a part of something big and cool. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And the people were very nice and offering. And then what eventually led to this is that, like I mentioned, that door, I was looking it up, and I happened to tell some guys at the office, including the writer that ultimately wrote the episode, and this producer heard me. He's like, that door. He's like, wait a second, I have an idea. First, we're going to get you that door. And then we looked online, and the door said, pick up only in Philadelphia. So we're like, well, we're not going to Philadelphia, but that kind of inspired this episode. So the producer and the writers kind of like went back and forth on ideas, and like, okay, what if we have Stan looking for this elusive door? And then, I won't go into all the details, but it went on from there, and that's how the episode kind of came to be. Meanwhile, I'm still looking for my car. I thought that was cool. Great.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe they'll put an episode out, but they come up with ideas all the time that don't happen. And they did, and they went forward with this. Obviously, I knew, and even they knew, the door wasn't truly elusive, but that's not the point. It's in real life, in the show, it made for good story. So
sure. Yeah, it's a TV show. Yeah.
This was a very unique episode in of itself for our show, because it happened that it was written, the script was written, and we got it going, but we didn't get any real recording done, and then boom, the writer's strike came. And then as a result of that, since a lot of our writers, including the main star, Seth MacFarlane, are also actors, they were in basically solidarity with the writers. So not only could we not get the show going, we couldn't record the audio. They wouldn't come in. So what happened is they had this show. It was sitting there. It was October 2007, as I recall, when it got written. Usually our shows take about 10 months from writing to on the air or thereabouts. This one was going to take longer because of the strike. It ended up taking all the way, I think it was like March or April of 2009 before it even aired. So we had to go ahead and start animating without sound and then match the animation later, which is a backwards way of doing animation. But they did it. Yeah. So the director happened to be a car guy of the episode, and he and I went down to Delorean, and he ended up getting a lot of information and photos and things that he could go off. Got him a model of the car and everything he needed to like go ahead. I just put myself in as kind of like more involved in this just because it was cool. But
sure,
one of the other aspects of it is that they surprised me. Like, I got a copy of the script and I open it up and I'm in there. And I'm like, wait, what? And they all wanted to like hire as many, actors from Back to the Future, like the B actors. Well, they wanted to try and get some of the bigger names. They were able to get several of them coming in to record for the show. I got to record them as well, of course. But they wanted to cast, I'll pronounce his name wrong, but Casey Samatsko, who actually played 3D, the guy with 3D glasses in Back to the Future on Biff's gang, to play me. But the writers and one of the producers pushed for me to do it. And I had been a member of SAG as a kid, but I took an honorable withdrawal, I think it's the best term they use for it, when I was a kid, so that I didn't want to pay the dues anymore. And I said, let me find out. Like, the casting director was kind of like, no, we should hire all these other actors. And that we did hire some of them, but they said, well, if Shawn wants to do it, he has to be in SAG. And I said, okay. SAG literally was across the street from my office on Wilshire Boulevard, Miracle Mile. So I walked over. They said, yeah, $57. You can rejoin. I said, I couldn't hand that money over fast enough. So I handed them money. That's
awesome.
Came back over, and they said, okay. So then they let me record the pieces for that bit. And to this day, I get tiny little checks from it.
I looked up a picture of you, and they basically animated you as well.
Oh, yeah.
The character looks just like you, so...
Yeah, I was so humbled by it. It was like, oh my God, they nailed how I look, and they had me in the show. So yeah,
right.
Great Scott, that door is mine. I've been looking for it for years.
I don't know what you're talking about. My dad and I are just headed to Santa Fe to sell our unique collection of turquoise jewelry. The Navajo believe the turquoise. Floor it, Dad!
They ended up killing off my visual character in a later episode. There was an episode where they had basically a bus go over a cliff with all these random side characters, and I was
100 deaths in one episode. Yeah,
and they had me like scream as I was going down, like re-record that later. So yeah, that was basically how they got rid of me in terms of a animation model later on. And another writer that I was friends with did that as a joke to me. So I was like, okay, But yeah, that's how it came to be. And when it finally did air, I had a party at my house. Had about 60 people there. I set up multiple projection screens, and we had a big party. I got the actress that played Francine. She'd always said she wanted to see my home theater system, and so she came to the party, and it was fun. So it was a great experience, and an honor. And I did get to do the DVD extra commentary when they did it.
Oh wow!
Yeah, while recording.
I haven't listened to that.
Yeah,
very cool. So the episode came out April 19th, 2009.
That sounds about right.
By that's what IMDb says, assuming it's correct. By that time, you'd had the car at that point around 2 years. Granted, this took a long time to get the TV show done, but you'd had the car getting worked on by Don and Danny. Yeah. You've been driving it.
Yes.
Were you part of the community at that point? Did you know many other owners? Were you doing any kind of car shows or parades or anything?
Yes, I started doing that. I can't remember when I really got going with that, but I had it from 2007 to 2012. Yeah. I definitely was involved with the community as much as I was able time-wise. I mean, the one thing about my job was I could afford more because I was getting paid well, and I never took that for granted, but I didn't have a lot of time other than weekends. And even then I didn't have time all the time. So it was one of those things where I tried to take advantage of as much time as I had and didn't get really any serious vacations until a couple years later, where I forced myself and kind of forced them to let me take an actual vacation. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of one of the things when I got the job, I had to be available all the time. So
you don't get opportunities like that very often. And there's 1,000 people or 10,000 people that want the job. So you tend to not screw that up.
Exactly. Yeah. No,
that's the industry.
That's the industry. And I definitely was thankful because I had lived, I'd had pretty steady work all my career up until then. But at the same time, I knew Oscar winners that were out of work for over a year or 2 years, some cases. So it's not like it can't happen.
Right.
But anyways, so I was thankful for that. It's not, don't get me wrong. I was very grateful. But,
most people have regular jobs. So, they usually have more time do the other fun stuff. So there's no judgment here at all. It's just interesting trying to figure out how your DeLorean ownership fit into the rest of the community. There's people that buy the DeLorean and just don't want to be involved at all, whether they travel or they're busy or they have family or whatever, and they don't do anything. So I'm curious what kind of stuff you did. The fact that you went to DCS, even though it was Vegas, is not that far from LA. That's great, because I know a lot of owners that have never been to any of the DCSs. They've never been to anything, but they're still part of the community. So I'm curious how that plays in, what you did.
Well, once I was involved with, them at the shop and Danny and Don, I got to hear about things going on and everything. And I remember there was one occasion where these guys were doing, for like a Doctor Who convention, they were doing some sort of a parody video where timeline had changed. And in this alternate timeline in present day, the DeLorean had succeeded hugely. And it became this major success, and they were everywhere. So they invited a bunch of DeLorean guys to show up and go to iconic locations around LA, park the cars, and make it look like, there's just a bunch of DeLoreans in the parking lot, because that's a normal thing in this world. So we did that, and at the time of that, I met this guy who was a big DeLorean Back to the Future guy, and he got his car about a month after me. No, actually, I think he got it a month before me. But what I did, I failed to mention this, is I secured, it's just luck, it really is. I secured the last sensical, if you will, variation on the movie license plate. I got, since there's only 7 characters, as we all know, in the California license plate, and the movie had 8 because it's a movie, I got out, O-U-T, O-T-M-E. That was as close as I could get to out a time, and I got out O-T-M-E. And he was upset. I'm not going to say who that was, but he really wanted that for his car, because he made a Back to the Future car, and I got it because I pre-bought it. I actually purchased the rights to that number, that sequence of letters, ahead of time. And then, for knowing that I was eventually going to have the car, and I might as well get it, because if I don't, someone else, I don't know how that lasted that long, and I was able to get it.
Yeah.
And so then that's it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so I had that plate. Even though I wasn't making a Back to the Future car, I wanted that plate. I wanted some piece of the movie involved in it. Yeah.
And I think I had mentioned it at the very beginning, but your VIN was 0855. So 855, crazy low VIN number.
Yep.
One of the first 300-400 cars off the line.
Yeah.
You said you'd put in eventually more than double what you paid for it, which is not totally unheard of, but the fact that you said there were no the door guides were not in the car, because there are very few, only the very, very early cars didn't have door guides, and most of them, when they came over to the US, they went to the QAC, and the QAC put them on. So
maybe somebody took them off. This car had one owner before the guy I bought it from, I believe, and he was in New Mexico, and it had New Mexico plates on it. The new owner in Idaho had never registered or anything. He just had it. So he never did anything to it, to be honest with you. So he just, when I went to get it, he tried to make it as roadworthy, as I said, out of respect for me, and knowing he didn't want me getting stuck on the road. So so that it wasn't there. That's my memory is pretty clear on that. They weren't there. But what Danny did is I ultimately just got it up and running so I could have the car. And then I drove it for a while, and I said, well, you want to do this? I want to do this, obviously, and this and that. Stage 2 engine. It was an automatic, so a stall speed converter he put in it, I think is what he called it, and that helped a little bit of off the line, because the Stage 2 wasn't very effective with just an automatic. So this stall speed converter thing, which is something he knew about, I know enough about cars to be dangerous, but not enough to really get into the details of it. I just knew that it gave me a little bit off the line, more power, that. He did that, and then
I don't think I've ever heard you say it's a little bit slower. It was
stall speed converter.
Wow,
that's the term I remember. I mean, you can double check with Danny, but that's the term I remember. Maybe I'm off on it, but that's what I stuck in my.
Stall speed converter. I've had my car just over 3.5 years. I talk to a lot of people. I'm obviously not an expert, but I talk to lots of people, hear lots of things. I have never read or heard that term before. That's interesting. I wonder if it's gotten a different name in the last several years, or if nobody uses those anymore.
I'll admit that I could be mistaken on the term, but that's what I remember it to be called. He did the stage 2, and then he did that when I told him, look, man, it doesn't quite have the oomph I want. I wanted to stick to the PRV engine. I knew I wanted to stay true to the car, not put in a, you know, I know, I'm no disrespect. I know Danny's done his own car with like a Vortec 4.3, which I actually had in my first car, my S10 pickup. It was a great engine, great, nice, powerful. All the power to people that are putting their, you know, their fancy car engines and their Lotus engines and the V8s and that, great, cool. But no, I wanted to stay true to it and use as much power as I could. And that's what I did. Yeah. And then, as I recall, after that, I decided, well, you know, we gotta fix up this interior. The dash was kind of jacked, and you know, I want to make this look nice. And so, I also wanted a kind of a cool idea. So I came up with the idea of getting this pop-out video screen that comes out of the normal dash mount size radio and pops up and slides out. Yep. So I found one used, and it was the one I wanted, and all the surround sound system. And then Danny, on his own, designed this amazing dash that was out of like leather and is custom, and it had a little lift up in the middle that he installed the center channel speaker for the surround sound. He dynomatted the entire interior, ripped it all out, put that dynomat soundproofing material in there, and put a subwoofer in the little storage compartment behind, so you know that there. I had, as far as we know, the very first 5.1 surround sound DeLorean. And a video screen inside of it. So that's what made it really unique on the inside.
I started looking around at getting one of those, but my big thing was I didn't want to block the center, you know, air vents, because basically that's where 95% of the air comes out, and I'm like, you know, I don't really need that. Ultimately, I became more of a purist, and I left the original ASI radio in there. But to each his own. I'm a huge believer in people. Do whatever you want to the car. It doesn't matter. This is not a Fabergé egg. So, yeah, I know there's people get pissed off when people do time machine conversions, but so what? There's not 6 of them in the world. So it's okay. Make changes.
No, I agree. I rode the middle kind of. I was like, I wanted to stay true to the form of the car and the general look, but I didn't mind a little bit of change in the interior that was tasteful. So when he did this dash, he basically modified it along the top, not the actual control panel or the surface area. It was the top. He put this leather top that went up a little higher, which allowed for this, you know, the width of the center console, where a center channel speaker that goes with this radio system would go, and that was as I recall, above the vents. So because if it had been below the vents or he'd moved the vents, then the screen would have blocked the sound. So I took that I would lose the sound, the air blowing a little. But because he added all that extra insulation for sound, I think it helped to also keep the car cooler. And overall, the air went to the sides of the screen when it kind of had a little space behind it. So it worked effectively enough so that it was fine. But I know what your concern was, and it actually probably kept the screen real cold when it was blowing. It did. It made the screen metal really cold, but it was fine.
And it's not like when you're driving the car, you've got I mean, you could use it for GPS and other things, but you're probably not watching videos while you're driving. So
no, it actually had a feature that you could turn that off. Like you could have it so it was safe, and like, you know, it actually was defaulted to that, but you could take that off if you wanted to. What I would generally do with it when I was driving is I had to re-listen to the audio that we recorded for the show sometimes to check for stuff. And since I had a long commute, I would just do that off of a disc, and I would have not the video on and just listen through. It would be a video disc, but it would be without me looking, so I wouldn't be distracted, just so I could hear the quality of the audio.
Just the audio.
So it acted as a little sound studio for me when I was driving, and you know, and I was able to do that.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and it ended up being used my car for sound effects for the show. We went out and recorded in the desert, which a lot of sound people do. I went out with a sound supervisor and recorded all these sound effects from my car, driving by, doors moving, all this stuff. So my actual car is the car in the show, sound-wise, which is cool. And
that's awesome.
They couldn't buy the music, although Seth MacFarlane is really good friends and colleague with Alan Silvestri. He loves his music. He couldn't actually get the rights because I think that was owned by Universal and it was probably too expensive. So they created music that was inspired by it, the movie soundtrack. And that episode was just funny. It was funny stuff.
Oh, it was very funny. Yeah, and if people haven't seen it, it's on Hulu.
Hulu and I think Netflix, wherever they have American Dad,
Yeah. Season 4, episode 16, called Delorean Story-An. Story-An. So definitely go watch that if you haven't already seen it.
Yeah, that was. I mean, it was an adventure. There's so many stories to tell from that thing. I know we can't go on forever here, but it was a real amazing experience. Probably the highlight of my career, just that I got to do sound and be a voice actor in it.
You were freaking in the show. I mean, so you weren't a walk-on actor in a live show. No, most people don't get animated.
No,
I mean, I got listed as an actor for 4 seconds of an extra, that I did something on camera. You don't even see my face, but they listed me. So, the fact that you've done that stuff, you've actually been an actor, but being animated, that's pretty cool.
It was.
You had the car for a few years. Any other major updates other than 5.1 surround inside the DeLorean? That's pretty cool. Any other major updates to the car while you had it?
Well, we talked about the Stage 2. Yeah, I mean, we should talk about the car itself. I know we've gone off on tangents related, but I know this is about the car, so I should be more on that. I mean, Danny took out the 85 speedometer and put in I think a 140.
140, yeah.
I don't mind saying this. You don't have to cut this out. There may have been an occasion. I'm not going to confirm nor deny that I had it at a neighborhood of 120 on a roadway somewhere.
Good.
And thought that was probably as fast as I should push it, even with a 3-speed automatic especially. I'm not going to say exactly where that was, but let's just say it was a rather remote location. There may have been other DeLoreans in a convoy going to some particular hot place that you might know very well. So I'm not going to go any further than that. This is, again, neither confirm nor deny.
You were headed to we could say you were headed to DCS. That's great. Very cool. 120 in the car. I mean, people always go on and on about, it's underpowered, blah, blah, blah. And I have the manual, but I can peg the needle at 85, no problem. And, that's just getting onto the freeway or trying to pass people. And I'm not a speed demon. I'm not out there just going fast to go fast. It's when I'm trying to get around someone or whatever. I have no problem with it. So, I mean, 120, that's still, that's a lot more miles an hour than 80 or 85.
Yes.
So that's pretty good. I would be more concerned about the safety factor. A freaking 30-plus-year-old car going that speed, there's no airbags. It's not designed for a major wreck. You flip or you hit somebody at that speed, you're going to be hurting.
Yeah, it was a one-time thing on a very clear road and very smooth, and I felt safe enough. My better half was with me, and she was just like
no judging you,
not looking at what we were doing. And I leaned over after I did it. I said, "Do you know how fast you were going?" She's like, "No." And it's like, "You probably don't want to know." I told her how fast. She's like, "Oh my god!" And I said, "Yeah." I said, if I was going to do it anywhere, this was the place and time to do it with the other cars, around us, and they were going fast too. So it was that thing, and it's fun, but I never wanted to push it in terms of speed like that. I just wanted to be able to accelerate in a good manner.
When you're younger, you got to try that stuff, and as you get older, you realize, it's not that big of a deal for most people. But
that's true. that is true.
So you had the car from 07 to 12.
Yes.
Right. Any other major breakdowns during that time?
Breakdowns, not that I recall. There was, occasionally small things, but I don't recall anything. I did have, I'm not ashamed to admit this, I did have a couple accidents with it. And
oh, really?
One of them was just me not being careful. No one was hurt.
Sure.
The car was damaged in the front, had to replace the fascia and the hood. And that was hard with the rear hood.
And the hood.
Yeah.
Dang it.
And then there was one time when I took a corner a little sharp and I clipped the fender on a barrier on an on-ramp on a freeway. And it was just a mistake of over relying on my ability
overconfidence.
Yeah. And I admit, total mistake. So, and Danny, fixed it up. I handled that out of pocket and it was fine. And it is what it is. The other one was obviously an insurance thing because I had hit somebody, so I had to deal with that. But no one was hurt, like I said, so it was fine. But the final nail in the coffin for the car, which we can get into, didn't have it in after 2012. But I want to talk a little bit before I do that about the other experiences I had with it. I wanted to make it something really positive. So though I didn't get to do a lot of charity work, I did try to do some charity work, and specifically almost cliche, but in a good way, I did it for the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And I also brought it to, a friend's office to, make him look cool amongst his office mates. And we watched the movie
right.
There with his office mates in a screening room they had. And I did a lot of that kind of thing, and had it at the show, both in one show in Vegas, and I ended up, after losing the car the same year, going to the show in Orlando, where I showed the episode and hung out with people there. But
oh, wow.
It was a great experience for basically a little over 4 years that I had. It was January 2012, and then I did keep it for almost another year while I ended up finding the right buyer for it. And I'll tell you all about that if you want to hear it, if you have the time.
Yeah.
In January 2012, I think it was January 6th, a fluke incident again, but it was again me being probably a little overconfident or just not as careful. I thought it was an accelerator stick situation, but it probably wasn't in the end. At least that's what it turned out. It seemed like when they analyzed the car and everything. I was pulling out of my garage. I had a travel trailer in the driveway, and I usually would curve a little to the left so that I would go around the travel trailer from where the DeLorean was parked on the left side of the garage, facing out.
Okay.
I had the door open, and I was just watching so I didn't hit the hitch of the travel trailer, which I always did, was careful of. Somehow the accelerator went down, and it didn't come up, and I was curved at an angle, so I basically veered from the left side of my garage, left side of my property, across by the travel trailer. The edge of the open door caught the front end of the travel trailer. Just made a hole in that. It didn't really do a lot of damage to that. It damaged the door pretty badly.
Yeah.
Then I
I
veered across my front yard. I managed to avoid hitting a tree, and I managed to avoid going into a car on the side that was parked on the street. But I basically went into the back of a pickup truck, someone else's pickup truck, that was parked on the street and damaged the front end. And in the process, it was pretty messed up. And I was not quick enough to turn the ignition off or whatever that I should have done at the time, because it happened in split seconds.
Well, it happens in a couple of seconds, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure now in retrospect that my foot was caught on the accelerator behind the pedal, because I was kind of leaning a little bit out to look at the door while I was using forward. I was very careful, but it was just enough to catch it, and it was, what do you call that? A perfect storm.
That is so heartbreaking.
Well,
I mean, for you, same thing. You wanted the car for a long time. You had these other crazy, amazing experiences, and then pulling out of the garage, you end up clipping the trailer, torquing the door, and then running into a truck.
Yes, and that was all bad, and I was heartbroken. My neighbors ran over and they saw it and they were checking on me. It was heartbreaking, and I was basically in shock. And my better half ran out of the house, and she's like, "Oh my god!" Anyways, long story short, we took it to Danny. He did his thing for a while. Took him quite a while. Estimated up the repairs. The repairs came out to be $32,000 plus. The insurance company took one look at that and said, very funny.
Nope.
No.
Yeah.
Totaled. $28,000 is what they offered me. Then I took one look at that and said, very funny. No. And I fought them, and I fought them, and I fought them, and then I fought them some more. And then I hired someone to fight them a little more, where he charged me a fee. This was something expertise he had. He said, I will charge you this fee, but you'll only pay it if I at least double what you get you. So he added on a little bit more to the total. So in the bottom line, in the very end of the story, they gave me back everything I had put into it, which was almost, not quite, double what they originally offered me. So now you're getting a number of where I was in the car. They offered me $28,000, and I almost doubled that. They had to pay back to me that much more than they would have if they just fixed it, which was only $4,000 more than they offered me, and they didn't have to salvage that. But you know how it works with cars. As soon as you get a total, that's
salvage title.
As soon as they say it, that's the gospel. You don't go back from a salvage title once they declare. Generally speaking, I'm pretty sure that's how it is, and so that happened. And
who did you have for insurance?
I'd rather not say
during this time. Okay, no, that's fine. Was it a classic car insurance, or was it a normal car insurance company?
No, it was normal car, but they did acknowledge that it was a collector level. And Danny basically, I had every receipt, and Danny could back up everything. Yeah. So that's how I was able to fight them, and I was able to max it out. But then, think about it. The damage was on the door and the front. and it actually didn't look that bad. It could be fixed. It just was a lot to fix it. But the back end was fine, and the engine that I had in there with very little, mileage on it was fine. So
right.
I decided...
Well, this wasn't you weren't doing 65 miles an hour and,
no.
Cream somebody. This was a driveway accident that,
yep.
Well, anytime anything happens with this car, you can't just Bondo it over and repaint it, and you tweak the doors, and who knows, hopefully, you didn't, I don't know, did you break the hinges, or did it just tweak the door?
The door was tweaked. I mean, it would have taken... I don't remember exactly what all the details were, what was damaged at that point. I didn't really deal with it, once that had happened. So I didn't look into what... I just knew it was a lot and it was going to cost a lot. But mind you, I just want to say this in retrospect. I've driven basically like 500,000 miles, or probably in my life, on cars. I drove a lot. I had a lot of commuting to school, a lot of commuting to work over my life. In all my cars, probably, I think it added up once, and it was like 500,000 miles or something obscene like that, right?
Wow.
So it's not that I'm a bad driver. Everyone's had their accidents and tickets and everything, but I was not a bad driver. This car, I guess, because I was used to more modern cars, and I didn't always compensate equally, and I had another car that was a lot safer. That's probably where my problems came in, and I was a little too reliant on the technology of modern cars, I think. For this. But that being said, that's the way it happened. And what the beauty of it was, in the end, this is the silver lining. I always get lemons in life. When I get lemons, I do everything I can to make lemonade. And that's what I did here. I got the most out of it, first of all. Then I said, well, how much to buy back the salvage? They're like, $3,000. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Oh my gosh.
I handed them the $3,000 knowing the engine alone was $4,000 or $5,000. So,
yeah, exactly.
So I got that $3,000. Then I started deciding how I was going to deal with it, and ultimately sold it back through eBay. And really positive story came out of that. That was the real great thing. This gentleman in Ireland wanted it. Actually, no, I take that back.
Wow.
That would be too appropriate. It wasn't Ireland. It was Great Britain. I think he was in England proper. But
so they don't have the same issues with salvage titles we do, presumably.
I don't know anything about that. I just know this guy's story, and that's what I wanted to tell you, is that he had lost his wife, and he was trying to find a project, he liked cars, that would be something he could fill his time with, so he's not just grieving constantly, and he kind of wanted to rebuild this, if not directly in her honor, at least as something as that was positive out of that. And it really struck me. It didn't seem like a BS story. It seemed like he was legit, and he was happy to pay the price. I had actually done one other thing to the car in between that was unique. Danny didn't like it, but I did it with separate from him. There was a company called HH2 that made these hydrogen hybrid systems where it infused hydrogen into the engine and claimed to run the car cleaner.
Give you more power.
And theoretically give you more power and better efficiency, but with the direct injection, Danny explained it wouldn't do that, and I knew that. But I wanted something unique, and I did it, and it didn't have any problems. It never caused an issue with the car, even though Danny saw it once and didn't like it. But but it didn't cause any problem. No offense to Danny. I mean, he's perfectly right in saying that. But I had that done, and then this guy knew that it was in the advertisement on the eBay, and he wanted it. So he actually paid me an additional. I wasn't going to include it. I was going to keep it for another car, the system, and just remove it because it was pretty easy to remove. And he said, "No, I want it. I'll give you $1,000 for it." So I had actually made money off that, because even though I paid more than that, I had gotten the federal tax credit for that, because they actually had an alternative fuel tax credit that year that worked for that system.
Wow.
So I actually made I think I had like $400 off that system when I sold it, and he was happy to pay it, and it was fine. So he paid, I think, ultimately like $12,000 for the car. I think I sold it for $11,000 just as is, and then another $1,000 for that system. And he would have had to pay more than that for the system if he had bought it, and it hadn't been in there that long.
When you sold the car, had things been repaired at that point? You bought the salvage title.
Nope. No, as is.
Nothing had been repaired.
Nothing.
Okay, so the door basically you had to like tie down or something to keep it closed. I'm assuming it wouldn't lock.
I think it did ultimately was able to be closed because I wanted it to be water, resistant. I kept it inside, but just okay. I think we were able to close. Yeah, I think we were able to close it. I didn't tie it down. And the guy got everything with it. He got the new surround sound system. He got everything in there, but I'd already gotten most of my money back, not quite double from the insurance directly, but buying it back and then getting the $12,000, it ultimately was about double. So so minus the $3,000. So it was like for the salvage, car. But that was what it ultimately did, and what that allowed me to do was pay off all the debt I still had on the car. It paid off my other regular car that I drove regularly, loan. It helped pay back some money I had lent my mom when her cat got very sick and she had to spend thousands of dollars trying to save the cat. And I had all the things. So basically, in the end, I had no more debt except my mortgage, which I was very happy as a result of this. And it couldn't have been at a better time because, unfortunately, a few months later, around April of that, I think it was April of 2012, so, January to April, I lost my job. I was laid off. They canceled one of the 3 shows we were working on, which was the Cleveland show. It was American Dad, Family Guy, and Cleveland show, and the jobs got consolidated. And I had my 7-year job lost, and I didn't have that.
7 years doing that, and you still got let go. Wow.
It's,
it's
office
business.
Politics, and that kind of thing. I mean, it just is what it is. And it changed my life in a totally different way. And that's the story for another time, but I in a good way. And though I never got to do some of the things I would have liked to done with the car, it didn't sting as long as you might think it would have. It stung, but then as the car got sold later after I lost, I got the initial money, which paid off all that debt, and then the car was like icing on the cake when it sold to the other guy about a year, like January 2013, and he paid the thousands of dollars to have a shipping company come take it. He gave me the money sight unseen without any proof other than the eBay auction that he was going to get the car from me, and he trusted me, and I got it all ready.
Idaho to L.A. is nothing compared to L.A. to Great Britain.
Yeah, exactly. And I haven't heard from him since, but he did say to me if I ever wanted to communicate with him again, I have his contact, that if I ever was over there, he was going to have it restored and I could come drive it there. And I thought that was really cool of him to do. So maybe someday I've never been to England, if I ever get a chance to go there, I'll try to look him up and see if that's an option. I'm just glad that somebody could make something positive out of it. So
exactly. And you know what? This is a good opportunity. You after this episode comes out, you can go send him an email and say, hey, maybe you'll do an episode and talk about the same car after you've restored it. That'd be great to get him on the show.
I should look him up on again and do that. It's my own fault for not having done that. I should contact him and just in general and see if he's interested. But that would be a cool follow up to this for sure.
That would be really cool.
If I can, I still have his contact and can find him, I will do that. Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it's such a positive thing to have had that car that none of the bad stuff sticks in my mind.
Same thing. I don't remember anything bad. It's been a short time for me, but and I don't have any intention of getting rid of the car. But yeah, I think that there's so many great memories. People love the car so much. Everybody just knows the car, and if they don't love it, at least they appreciate it. For most people. So yeah, I can totally see that. A friend in Salt Lake City, he got hit by an ambulance and totally destroyed his car. It was a terrible story. Ultimately, I mean, you should. Jay Shetland, he's one of the past episodes. You should listen to that episode.
Okay.
And so he hasn't had his car for several years now, but we talk regularly, and he's like, oh, I found another car I want to get. So he still wants to have a DeLorean in his life. Not that everybody has to. There's no judgment on you. You had an amazing experience, better than probably anybody else will ever have.
4 years
even
of fun,
people that have time machines.
Yeah, no,
yeah,
totally.
4 years of fun with that car.
And all my money back, so basically, except for gas and insurance.
Right. That's crazy.
So yeah,
wow.
I mean,
what a story,
I would love
man.
to have another one. Yeah, no, it was awesome, and I appreciate you letting me have the chance to discuss it because it's something that was very personal and life altering for me in a good way, and it's something that I will always cherish. And would I have another one? I've said yes, but only if I had the kind of money where it's just an afterthought, which actually connects me to another story. Another DeLorean owner, a friend of mine, needed to sell his time machine. But Seth MacFarlane was a major fan of the movies and of the car, and he signed an autograph for me once that I still have. In fact, I'm looking at it right now in my office, and he said, I want to drive your GD car. And his sister warned me, don't let him drive your car. He wanted to buy it, and I told him one day, just randomly, I said, hey, my buddy's selling one. I don't know, just if you have any interest. And he's like, yeah, I do have an interest. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me put you in touch. And I was there the day he came to see it at my friend's place, and he said, "Yeah, I'm buying this," and that was that. And, I mean, obviously, he joked. He says my financial advisor or whatever is going to hate me for this, but he wanted it, so he got it.
McFarlane has done pretty well, so for him it is an afterthought, because even the nicest time machine, I mean, Danny, I think his went for 68 or something just a couple of years ago, and his is one of the most perfect time machines out there. So it's not like they're $200,000 car. So for somebody like McFarlane, who's had so many great shows for so many years and movies, afterthought for him.
And remember when
that is amazing.
Yeah, remember when I said I damaged the front end of my car?
Yeah.
I believe that was the time. I don't know if it was the hood or the front end. It might have been. It was a lot, though. Whatever it was, it cost a lot to repair. And the guy, again, I don't really feel comfortable saying his name without his permission. He felt so thankful to me for having brought him. I wanted nothing. I just wanted the satisfaction that he was taken care of financially, and that Seth got it. So he actually took care of that bill for my car repair, because it was at the same time.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah, so he was really cool to do that.
Well, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
One of McFarlane's movies is A Million Ways to Die in the West, which, honest to goodness, I have rewatched that 100 times. I just love that movie. It's so funny.
And the answer is yes.
And there's a scene.
The answer is yes.
It was his. It was used in the movie. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yes, the answer is yes.
No, that's exactly it. Well, it's for everybody else who's listening who hasn't, if they haven't watched the movie, and that humor is not for everybody, but if you do watch it, there is a very funny scene where Seth MacFarlane's character sees some buzzing and lights happening in a barn, and it's set in 1880s, and he walks over, opens the door, and they got Christopher Lloyd to do a 12-second cameo, being surprised, and there's a time machine sitting there. Totally unrelated to the entire rest of the movie, but for DeLorean and Back to the Future nerds, it's a great little homage. So that's pretty awesome. So they used McFarlane's time machine in that, the one that you connected him with to go buy.
I joked about it that it wasn't the right one for the 1800s, though, and that just because I was being a total nerd geek on that one, and I said, but I wasn't around for that production at that point. I knew he was doing it and everything, but I wasn't around to talk to him about it because it just wasn't there. But
McFarlane has done so much between all of his shows. There's so many. I honestly believe that he is trying to animate all of Back to the Future with his own characters, because he's done so many freaking scenes. It's hysterical.
Yes, he has.
I'm sure he knew it was the wrong time machine, but it didn't matter. It was a funny joke.
No, it was fun. It definitely was cool, and Seth got something that he truly loved, and he probably still has it. I don't know, but he wanted to do other things to it. I know he wanted to have power steering, and I think Danny and Don talked him out of that. And I had referred him to them. And
oh, dude, presumably you still talk to him. Sincerely, tell him. Gordon Carpenter in San Diego had it installed a year and a half ago. That car, I drove it. That power steering is friggin' amazing.
Oh, really?
Anybody that.
Well, maybe he ultimately got it. I don't know.
Well, but I mean, if nothing else, it's a good networking opportunity to say, hey, I just talked to some DeLorean guys, and they said there's a good system out now. Personally, I think that it's about $4,000, I think, all in, which is, on your way to a stage 2.
Does DeLorean officially use it?
Yeah. No, okay. They're installing it for the company that made it. If you go take a look at DeLoreanDirectory.com, and just do a search for power steering. Gordon wrote an article. There's pictures and video and information, and sincerely, it was amazing. I have video of Gordon doing a 3-point turn in the DeLorean with one finger. Literally turning the wheel from, we're not, if you're driving, if you're moving at, 5 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour, you can move the steering wheel easily. But when you're at a dead stop, to be able to turn the wheel with one finger, it's impossible in a normal DeLorean. So.
And I remember that well. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad that they finally got that. I'll see if I can mention it. It's not a bad idea that they were able to get it to work like that. That's good to hear. Thank you for telling me.
And for anybody out there that wants to do it, sincerely, it's really amazing. Reach out to Gordon Carpenter in San Diego if you really want to ask more questions. But check out the article on DeLoreanDirectory.com.
That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah.
It's not that I don't want to talk to people that don't own their DeLoreans, but you're in that special scenario, special case where you've got a pretty amazing story, And how cool that it all wrapped up the way it did, and then the other little fun stuff. Really fun to talk to you and get these stories.
And this weekend, or no, excuse me, next weekend, thanks to you posting that, I have to give you credit. So thank you very much. That event that I guess you had part in planning for the Back to the Future 2 and 3 screening at the Mission Tiki Drive-In.
Yeah, are you going to go to that?
Yes, and I think I mentioned to you that I had originally conceived of the idea when I had my birthday at that same drive-in many years ago, and we got about 6 local DeLoreans to come out and hang out, and I had my car there, and that was an amazing day in of itself, but leading up to that event, and then I thought of having the Back to the Future there, but unfortunately, because of the cost of film prints at the time, now it's digital, it didn't make sense to do it then. So now that it's finally being done, I'm so thankful, and I'm super excited to actually go see the drive-in theater scene in Back to the Future, which I've been to that filming location in Monument Valley, and to actually see it in the movie. In a drive-in theater, which is one of my favorite drive-ins. I've gone to a bunch of times. There's not too many left, but I've been to a lot of them, and that one is one of the local ones here. So I'm very excited, and thank you for any part that you had in getting that going and letting me know about it. I wouldn't have known about it otherwise.
Well, that was all Justin Trabue, Orange County DeLorean Club. He had the idea. He wanted to do it, and I said, I'll help however I can, but that was all him. And
awesome.
Yeah,
I
think it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, for anybody that is in Southern California, or if you know anybody, if you're not in the area but you know people, spread the word. Go to ocdelorians.com and find the event, or look them up on Facebook, Orange County DeLorean Club, and go check it out. There's nothing special about it other than they're showing Back to the Future Part 2 and 3, double feature.
Yep.
And it's $10. I think it's $10 a person to get in, something like that. It's just a normal ticket price for both movies, and
normal drive-in ticket price.
Normal drive-in tickets, yeah.
Which is cheap.
Yeah, bunch of DeLoreans there that should make for some pretty cool photo opportunity, and Orange County DeLorean Club people are all fun and friendly and outgoing, so.
And a friend of mine who has a time machine is going to be there. I told him, I said, it's my dream to sit in the car. I actually did a little mini drive-in theater in my driveway, and he brought his car there, and I sat and watched part of Back to the Future 1 in my driveway on a screen and a projector, and through his car. I had the radio playing the sound transmitted to the radio. But I want to actually be at a real drive-in watching that movie, Part 3 specifically, through the windshield of a time machine. So I'm very excited about it. That's about as geeky as it could possibly get, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. But I'm very excited. He said, you can sit in the passenger seat, he told me. I said, awesome. So I'm excited. I feel like I should be more involved in the community, even though I don't have the car still. I feel like, like John Parsons is a good guy, and he really dreams of having it. He's a young guy, so he'll have one too, but right now he doesn't. But he's so knowledgeable and passionate about it. So I feel like I should be more involved in it, even though I'm not. But I don't have any regrets. Like, everything that happened for a reason, and it's all good, and I'm thankful, and I'm not going to get too down about it. It had a rebirth and everything, so it's all good, and I'm thankful that you let me just share that, because it really was a cool thing, and I hope other people appreciate the story. Maybe it'll inspire some people, and if not, then at least I got to say what I had to say, and you enjoyed a few laughs. So
Shawn, I sincerely thanks. Very fun, awesome to get the story right from the horse's mouth, because sometimes we all hear stories, and when that episode came out, a bunch of people are like, it was a guy on the show and blah blah blah, and then you read little blurbs, but to hear it right from you, that's pretty cool. So Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all your stories.
Thank you.
All right, well, to everybody out there, please keep writing in, contact@DeLoreanTalk.com. Be sure, if you haven't done it yet, to go fill out a DeLorean census form, DeLoreanDirectory.com/census. Fill out as much or as little information as you're willing. There's a lot of people have been filling out the census lately, and it's growing and growing. Lots of great detail. I think it's really going to be helpful for the community in the coming years to track down all the cars and really know what the condition is and what the details are. Check out DeLorean Directory on Facebook and spread the word. Make sure that the clubs know about it. And anybody back east, any of the club leaders, I'd love to get you on the show to talk about your club and what you guys are doing to inspire other clubs to do more, because I think the magic of the car really is sharing it with other people, and if there's other people around, you're much more likely to take care of the car. Thanks everybody for listening. Drive safe, and we'll see you in the future. I can't believe I just said that.
That's awesome.